The following transmission is between myself and Bishop, assistant lead writer for the Fallout New Vegas mega mod, Nuevo Mexico. 2 years ago, a man going by the name of Zapshock brought many different wildly talented people across the Fallout New Vegas modding community together to begin work on the story and actualization of Nuevo Mexico, a story that, to this day, remains shrouded in mystery. However, based on trailer footage and gameplay videos put out by the team, it is a story that takes strong inspiration from older games in the series, most notably the cancelled Van Buren project, which was the original vision for Fallout 3 under the original developer, Black Isle Studios. Bishop and I talk about a wide variety of topics over the course of this interview, such as the role that nostalgia has in games, the balance between scope and substance in Bethesda games specifically, and of course, the Nuevo Mexico project. This is the Atomcast, and the best way to show your support is by subscribing to our Patreon, as your monthly contribution will go towards improving the quality of transmission, as well as helping to decrease the time between uploads. As always, links to our Patreon, as well as guest socials, will be linked in the description below. Without further ado, assistant lead writer for Fallout Nuevo Mexico, Bishop. 3, 2, 1. That was actually really good timing. My air conditioner turned off at the same time. Or at least I heard my central air turn off at the exact same time as I hit one, right? But yeah, so the first thing I wanted to ask you, I'm trying to change things up a little bit how I go about interviewing people. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about, sort of a two-part question. Have you played Fallout 76? And if you have, why or why not, and what is your opinion on Fallout 76 as it relates to the wider Fallout ecosystem? I guess that's technically 3 questions, but you get what I... Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I have not played Fallout 76. It's not something that interests me, as I've only spent about roughly 8 hours on Fallout 4. It takes a direction that isn't something that got me interested in the series to begin with. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's dog shit. It's a horrible game. No one should play it. It's an abomination to the Fallout community. No. Now, I don't have very many high opinions of it, but again, it's just a simple opinion. I think it offers some positives, I suppose I could say. It offers a lot to someone who's a casual Fallout junkie, who just loves everything about the atmosphere and the world surrounding its previous games. And something that's interesting and that I like is that it's able to reach all walks of life, old fans and new fans. It's accessible and ready for us if we want it. I understand that microtransactions can be a little off-putting, but it's not something that I would personally play. I'm not a huge multiplayer sort of fan. The only sort of multiplayer games that I've ever played was Call of Duty, and even then, I was a teenager. I've sort of outgrown that. Or no, I shouldn't say that. I'm not outgrown that. I've outgrown myself in a sense that I don't have any major interest in something of that sort. So an open world multiplayer game sounds fantastic, such as like RuneScape and World of Warcraft. And putting this in a Fallout setting is, I should say, a lot of people's dreams come true. And so for those people, that's great. But for me personally, it's not something that I could really sink into and get lost in. I'd be too preoccupied with the grind and in the world around me constantly changing. Um, a multiplayer game like that constantly has to change or update, where the structure can look completely different than when it first started to the end of its life cycle. So I think Fallout 76, when we were first introduced to it, is a whole different beast now. I can only imagine it's completely different than what we saw at the E3 presentation, and from when it wasn't finished, essentially
Yeah.
when it released and it was buggy. I think that now it's evolved into something completely different. So if someone's interested in something like that with their RPGs, that's great. Hey, more power to you. But it's not something that would particularly interest me, who prefers a sound, structured world to explore.
One of the things that I've heard a lot of people say is that Fallout 76 or a different Fallout project should be co-op instead of multiplayer. What do you think? Do you think that would if Fallout 76 instead was a co-op experience instead of a online multiplayer experience? Do you think that would have given you do you think that that would have made the game a bit more interesting and approachable for you? And do you think that would have changed people's perception on the game as a whole? And do you think that would have gone in a positive or a negative direction?
Oh, definitely. I think that I would have at least given it a shot. As someone who's a little older, I grew up with split screen multiplayer and on the GameCube. So having something like this, a co-op campaign, let's use New Vegas for an example. If there was a co-op campaign that acknowledged two people in its world space at the same time, that would be absolutely incredible. Now, I'm not going to bother with the know-hows and how that would actually work. And if you could even have an open world with two different things going on at this exact same time, that stuff is beyond me. I'm not going to worry about that. But just sharing an experience, either sitting next to someone or through online, I think that would have been easier to digest within the community, instead of let's throw everyone in this server in the same space or on multiple servers in the same space and see what happens. Bethesda's always been really adamant about having their games be geared towards making your own fun in the world space. I think Oblivion is like that. I think Morrowind is like that. I think Skyrim is like that. I think Fallout 3 is like that. You make your own fun. So while their game worlds might not do much to flesh out your character other than tell you who you are as like a name, I think it's our job as the player in their games to make our own make believe, play pretend in a sandbox type of character. Like, the invisible stuff is up to us. The stuff that the game can't control and account for, that's all up to us. So if there was a co-op story and you could do that with somebody else, again, I think that would be easier to digest in the community. And I think it would have been a little more successful, and there would have been it would have been an option going forward. I think it would have offered a lot. If it was interchangeable, if it was a forced co-op experience, I don't think it would be well received at all. But if you could play by yourself or have someone hop in and have the story, have two separates. Don't have a drop-in co-op system. Don't have that. Have a separate single player and have a separate co-op where the story and the world changes to accommodate for that dramatic change. Because if they created a immersive co-op experience where You and your friend are both the main characters here. That would be, I think that's, that offers near infinite possibilities there about how interesting you could make the world around it. I think that's wicked and fascinating.
You remember that that game that released a couple years ago? I can't remember the name of it. It was that game where it's like what you were saying. It was a forced co-op game. It was a 2-person game. One person was playing one convict, the other was playing another convict, and they had to like escape prison.
A Way Out.
Yeah, that was it. A Way Out.
Yeah,
I watched.
yes.
I watched the game.
I watched the full playthrough with that as well.
Did you watch the Game Grumps playthrough? Like I did.
I think so. I believe so. It's been some years, but yeah, I believe it was theirs. Yeah, where they made fun of A Way Out.
Yeah,
they made those puns through. Yeah, okay, that's the one I saw.
And they're all like, hey, my kid. He's like, the helicopter. Like, no. Yeah, it's the helicopter. My kid's a helicopter.
Yeah, that's right.
That was good shit.
Absolutely.
But like, so I guess firstly, do you think that the direction that that Bethesda takes a lot of their games, as you said, they create a game that gives the player a lot of agency in like creating their own fun or creating their own like little like, God, I forget the name. I talked with a previous guest about it's this phenomenon that happens in the human brain where you're like, you're telling yourself a story and it's like happening in your head, and there's like characters and stuff like that. It's like phonetic daydreaming or something. I can't remember what the first word is, but it's that essentially you have an ongoing like story or narrative in your mind's eye, and usually like it comes more to the forefront when you're like listening to music or writing a story, or just like just doing that daydreaming.
Absolutely. Yes.
The creating your own story thing. Do you think that is something that is like, is that a good thing for Bethesda to more so focus on, perhaps?
Yes.
Detracting a little bit from the, like, creating a more powerful main story? Like if you compare Fallout New Vegas's main story to Fallout 4's main story, I think it's kind of objective which one is better. And that was a trick question because we all know that Fallout Shelter has the best story. Like, come on, let's be real.
How could I forget? Right?
God tier storytelling.
Jeez, it was so good. I never even played it. Like,
yeah.
Unbelievable, man.
That's always like a funny factoid to just like pull out as like a party trick. You're like, hey, what's the best Fallout game? Like, oh, Fallout New Vegas. Like, oh, Fallout 4. Obviously, like, you're both wrong. It's Fallout Shelter. Check the sales number. Checkmate, losers. But yeah, so like you think that is a good thing that Bethesda does. It puts a lot of the player agency in the hands of the players so that they can create their own story and their own events.
Absolutely. Oblivion, for an example, was my first big 3D open world RPG ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed me as a young boy. I was 13 when I was over at my friend's house, and I saw him playing Oblivion. I was absolutely captivated. It was so simple. It was so simple. He didn't even dive too much into hardly anything, but it was so amusing, and we had so much fun in the 2 hours that we played it. And I wanted to play that myself. It was the first time where I was really graduating off of like Nintendo's experiences, such as Pokemon and Sonic the Hedgehog. And I was getting older. It was the perfect time for me to explore something with a much more mature and deeper theme. And Oblivion, I've spent over 1,000 hours playing Oblivion. It's such a fantastic game with a fantastic world and a fantastic story. And I suppose I like Oblivion so much because everything I was doing in that game was bigger than I was. Almost. Just about everything I was doing was bigger than I was. I could do almost everything in that game except ascend to godhood. I always could answer to something in that world, to something in that game. Even becoming, what is it, in the Knights of the Nine, the Divine Crusader. Even becoming the Divine Crusader, I still answered to the Divines. I wasn't a Divine myself. And so crafting this character and playing pretend in my head while I was playing, giving my character a voice. I would play and I would voice out the dialogue options that I wanted. And sometimes in a scenario, let's use another quest from Oblivion as an example. There was one single quest line from in Bruma, in the northern city of Bruma, where you found someone in a cave that murdered their friend, and you're trying to get their information or revenge or something like that. It's been a few years since I've played it, but that encounter, the combat's all janky and really quick. Honestly, it's depending on what difficulty you're playing on, it's very quick. And so when I was done with that encounter, I stopped, I paused the game, and I pictured it in my head. How would it really go down? Like, as if I was watching a movie. Like, I choreographed this whole scene in my head of how my character and this other dark elf would clash in combat, and how my character would be victorious. And so that right there has been ever present through every Bethesda RPG that I've ever played. I did it in Skyrim, I did it in Fallout 3, and I did it in New Vegas. I tried to do it in Fallout 4, and I couldn't do it. I was this kid's father. I was the sole survivor, and that was it. I had my dialogue options. I had my voice. I was playing as someone concrete already. And yes, it turned me away from it. I couldn't finish it, and I wish I could get my money back. But that's okay. I gave it a shot, and I gave it a shot, and I think that it's hurting the series. It's hurting the franchise of Fallout that it's going towards more of this casual system, to where it's almost like Bethesda doesn't trust us to make our own fun anymore. And I think that's a shame. I think they should go back to those roots. These games are rated M for mature, not T for teen, or rated E for everyone. Or E10 plus. So, like, they made timeless games before. Morrowind, timeless. Oblivion, timeless. And those games you can go back to, even if when I'm in my 40s and I have kids, I want to show them these fantastic worlds that they can get lost in, if that's their thing. And so these games, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, whichever Fallout you think is superior, I think they're both fantastic games. And I think Fallout 3 and New Vegas offer different experiences. So to get lost in these worlds is such a privilege. It's such an amazing experience that you wish you could do it twice. You wish you could do it twice, and no game is exactly the same. Some people might be extremely opinionated and say, all the Bethesda games are real cookie cutter and they copy paste things here and there. I disagree. I think every single game that they've ever made is leaps and bounds different. You just have to look in the right places for it. And yes, I do think there was a decline, and I do believe that it started with Skyrim. I think there was a decline in that make your own fun. Skyrim still held on to that.
That's interesting. That's the first time I've heard that. What do you see as the start of the decline with Skyrim specifically?
In Skyrim, I've spent over 600 hours in Skyrim, right? So a sizable amount of time. And I've also, and this was on console, so I've played it with mods installed. I've tried to. So I guess all in all, it'd be fair, I played over 750 hours, roughly. Maybe closer to 800.
Filthy casual.
Yeah, imagine, right?
Right. Imagine
A
having
whole
less than
month's worth of
right.
hours.
Imagine having less than 2,000 hours in any Bethesda game.
Disgusting. Oh,
Filthy
why am I even on
casual.
this podcast?
Are you even a real Fallout fan?
Right, imagine, right, exactly.
I'm sorry, continue.
No, it's all right. So for Skyrim, everything that I experienced in Skyrim was amazing and magical, but only once. I truly believe that Skyrim is the biggest one-trick pony that Bethesda has.
Mhm.
I have played through Skyrim in its entirety, 100%, every single quest done, every single thing mastered, you name it. I've done it in one file. I have tried so very desperately hard to get back into it, even with a year, over like a couple years break. I didn't play Skyrim for multiple years. And I came back to it with a fresh mind, trying to capture some of that nostalgia and that magic that I was feeling in my mind. And it was absent. It was completely absent. The magic was gone. There was no multiple choices. There wasn't different ways around said stories. And I realized that the world wasn't even half as alive as Oblivion was. I know Oblivion's Radiant AI, and there's a lot of memes. It's hilarious. It's fucking hilarious. And sure, that is dated now. But 2006, at that time, Oblivion made itself timeless. Every single NPC in that game has something to say to you. The only copy paste NPCs there are what I think some of the guards. But even then, every single guard in that game has a unique face. They have a unique facial pattern. You say what you want about the voice acting. I think the cast of 9 people did such a phenomenal job. I mean, that's voice acting 101 right there. You got to tip your hat. It's just absolutely incredible. The connections were so personal and rich and interesting for me. And Oblivion didn't always hold your hand with everything. Skyrim held your hand and beat you over the head that you are the Dragonborn. And you are this divine world-eating slayer. All right? You slay the timeline destroyer. It was cool the first time. And then I tried to get into it again, and it just wasn't there anymore. I already experienced it. I ran through this race once already, and there's so much that I forget about it. I can close my eyes and play Oblivion in my head because I remember things almost so vividly. And I played. It's not because I spent years apart from these games either. I played them relatively around the same time. The summer before Skyrim was released in November, that June, July, August, I played Oblivion, and so I was so ready for more. I was so ready. I spent that entire summer playing Oblivion and mastering it and looking up YouTube videos. It was masterful. I loved it. It changed me. It was just so amazing. I don't regret a single second on that game. And I don't regret the time I spent on Skyrim either. But it just didn't have that same magic when I tried to do it again. Because I have multiple files on Oblivion. I've spent more time. I spent almost twice as long on Oblivion than I have in Skyrim. And it's not that Skyrim is a bad or underwhelming game. That's not it at all. It just lacked that deep connection and magic that their 2 other previous 3D Elder Scrolls worlds had. And so I respect and admire that Skyrim has touched the lives of so many people, and it's their entire life. They've modded the shit out of this game. I mean, holy Jesus Christ. The amount of mods for Skyrim and the amount of money that's been poured into this game. holy shit. I mean, it's really awesome when you think about it. It's like, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool that millions of people came together with this experience. And I love that about Skyrim. I love that it was able to be released 5 times. I love that you can play it on Amazon, Siri, or Alexa. That is so fucking funny. I can't. Wow. Video games have come a long way. You know what I mean? Like, that's really, really cool. Even Call of Duty doesn't have that. All right, and that's arguably the most popular franchise on the planet. So Skyrim has its magic, but then again, Skyrim was also the ultimate catalyst in Bethesda realizing they could do less and get more. Do you understand what I mean? There was less environmental storytelling in Skyrim. Instead, Skyrim was telling you what happened. It was throwing it in front of your face, and it was beautiful and dazzling and captivating when you saw it for the first time. But there was almost nothing that you had to figure out for yourself. There was almost nothing that you couldn't see coming. I don't think anything took me by surprise in Skyrim. I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. I think the perfect example, you could take every single quest line, every single piece of content in Skyrim, and then hold it up to the same candle that the Dark Brotherhood of Oblivion has. And it just doesn't hold up. It just simply does not hold up. If you compare the College of Winterhold and the Arcane University in Skyrim and Oblivion, and you put them together, and you ask anyone to sit down and play both of those quest lines, I guarantee you 90% of the people will say that Oblivion was way, way more magical than anything the College of Winterhold did, especially narratively. Now, I'm not saying that the College of Winterhold is perfect and it's the greatest thing ever. In Oblivion, it can be quite tedious at sometimes. It has its shortcomings. But the College of Winterhold just failed to make me give a shit. And the same thing with the Companions Guild. Oh my god, that must have been one of the most driest experiences I've ever had in any sort of companion or a guild quest line, I should say. In any sort of guild quest line, it was extremely dry. And I think probably the best guild in Skyrim is probably the Thieves Guild. But then again, it's painfully predictable. You can see the betrayal of, oh Jesus, what was his name? What, Mercer? I think that was his name. You can see his betrayal coming from 10 miles away. Like, it's not even surprising at all. This is a selfish prick, and they make it apparent to you as soon as you meet him. Like, this guy is bad news, and he's leading the guild astray for his own personal gain. So, again, still the best quest line in Skyrim, but falls short of most of Oblivion's other major content. That magic is missing. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to come back to that point. That whole magic of everything is missing. And they're both very linear games. Oblivion doesn't have very many branching paths. You have to stay on rails most of the time. But it's got that soul within it, where Skyrim's feels half-hearted and not fully fleshed out. And it hurts to say it, because I really love both of these games, and it hurts to realize and see these two games be compared to each other. And, the older I got, the more I realized, I'm like, it just doesn't emotionally latch onto me. Skyrim doesn't emotionally latch onto me like Oblivion did. The dungeons I know in Oblivion are samey, and some of them might be pretty much copy pasted, but I still felt the magic within them. Some were lazily done, yes, but a lot weren't. A lot had purpose. A lot had an internal, self-contained story within it. Some of Skyrim's dungeons had that, but most of the time, Skyrim's the only really fun, great dungeons were the Nordic ruins, and even then, only very few of them had a story to tell. Is there even any, like the Dragon Priests, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any sort of like story behind the Dragon Priests themselves as people when they were alive and when they were ruling? I don't recall ever hearing anything about any Dragon Priest, about how they ruled over their Nordic ruin and tamed or killed dragons. I don't recall anything like that. And if there was something of that nature in the game, lore-wise, that we could read in a book or have it be environmentally told through spirits and ghosts or notes, or just not even that, just simple things placed here and there, environmental storytelling to figure out what the fuck happened here. There's almost none of that. It's all replaced with interesting loot and creative traps and creative puzzles, recycled puzzles. That stuff is cool the first few times, but it gets exceedingly repetitive. And this was one of the first games where I realized Skyrim has a lack of unique looking weapons. Some of them have different colors, and some of them have, like, the Daedric artifacts are all unique. They all look unique. But mm-hmm. Oblivion has a plethora of different looking everything. Like, everything. Staffs, armor sets, even, like, really stupid shit, like the goblin totem staffs. Like, there's so much unique. The Thorn Blade from Cheydinhal. Like, I'm just off the top of my head. Like, I haven't played this in a while, but I still remember it. I think the most unique item in Skyrim is frickin' Volendrung, and maybe the Nightingale Sword. I struggle to come up with anything else that's like, wow, that was unique. Like, that was crazy looking. Like, I remember that. I loved wearing that armor. I loved using that weapon. Like, if you weren't using the Daedric artifacts, you were just using random enchanted, named vanilla looking items. Like a glass battle axe would be like the glass battle axe of the Forsaken, and it would expel dead people, zombies and undead up to level 20, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I guess that, geez, I word vomited there, I'm sorry.
No big. It's good because it gets you do bring up a lot of solid points, specifically when it comes to just like how I think a lot of people would agree that Bethesda does feel like it's changed a lot from its Morrowind days. Now that you've kind of like laid it out effectively, I think a lot of people would probably agree that Skyrim did kind of it like raised the bar, but also kind of set like a precedent in a way. Mm-hmm. As you said, they figured out they could do more with less, which isn't always, a bad thing. But one of the things that I think about is like, because we mentioned A Way Out earlier. Yes. And like how that was more of a co-op experience, a linear story thing, and how Bethesda's larger ethos when it comes to games is putting a lot more initiative and agency in the hands of the player, allowing them to carry out their maladaptive daydreaming, which, as we talked about earlier, is that the story in your mind's eye and stuff like that. Do you think that if Bethesda were to focus more on, let's say Fallout 5 or some other spin-off that they make, let's have a lot of creative fun with it. Let's say Fallout New Vegas 2 is going to be yeah. Let's say Fallout New Vegas 2 is going to be a co-op game. Let's say that it's going to be made by the same people or a lot of the same people that originally worked on Fallout New Vegas. Obviously, Obsidian is now an umbrella under Xbox, so Bethesda and Obsidian are now like on the same, the same level, as it were. Let's say they got together for a joint thing. Do you think that if they made Fallout New Vegas 2 a co-op experience akin to, No Way Out, A Way Out, or, maybe not something as restrictive, but that sort of like you can drop in with somebody else, or either a drop in or like a strict 2-player game, do you think that would be going against Bethesda's more open world player agency ethos? Because it seems like a lot of the intention, or maybe priority with games like A Way Out is that it has to focus a lot more on a strict linear story, and it sort of detracts from that more open, free-form player agency style of gaming. Do you think that would how do you think that would square with Fallout fans, Bethesda fans in general, and do you think it would still feel like a Fallout game, taking away some of that player agency, or even like a Bethesda game if we're speaking a little bit more grandiose and conceptual?
Right. That's interesting.
Because one of the things that I feel that, because I'm very vocal about my opinions about Fallout New Vegas. I think it's a great story. I have very clear. I think it's a great game. I have very clear and distinctive memories of. I was in college, and I was in a 3D design class, or a digital some sort of digital art class. And our desks were basically our computers, and I just remember as the teacher was talking, I was just looking up all the new information on this new Fallout game that's coming out that's based in Las Vegas and shit. And I'm like, This is awesome. Actually, no, sorry, that was the DLC. I was looking up Dead Money when I was actually yeah. When I was actually looking up information about the new Fallout game that was taking place in Las Vegas. That was back in high school. In the fucking school library. But
a good use of your time, I'd say.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. No wonder I was a fucking below average student.
Yeah, same.
But like, great story, good semi. You know what? I'm not even going to say semi. I'm going to say decent gameplay loop, because it does have a good gameplay loop. I do much prefer the RPG system in Fallout New Vegas compared to Fallout 4. And kind of a little bit Fallout 76. The RPG system in there, the way it works, is okay-ish. I don't know. I'm still kind of grappling with that, but I kind of like the more old school stuff. But one of the things I don't like about Fallout New Vegas, besides the more unhinged side of the community that seriously just needs to go outside and touch grass sometimes.
I agree.
Yeah. Of course, you could say that about any community, but this is the one I have chosen to plop myself into. So
this is the one we're talking about, right?
Exactly. But one of the things that I don't really like about Fallout New Vegas is sort of one of the same issues that you have with Fallout 4. You were stating that you don't really like that you're placed in the role of like a father and a husband, and you're going after your kid and stuff like that. I also am not a big fan of that. I actually think that the intro sequence and the call to let me rephrase that. I like the intro sequence to Fallout 4. I do not like the call to adventure that Fallout 4 grants you with. Like, this is who you are. This is what your objective is. Go out and do it. but you don't do that.
I can't imagine like not beelining it to try to find my kid. Like
exactly.
I can't. Like it's almost too urgent.
Yeah. But yeah, that I don't like. I think that was an awful idea. I think that if Sean was like removed from the picture, I think it would be an entirely different experience.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
How that compares to Fallout New Vegas is I really do not like, and it's so weird because I've heard people say that Fallout New Vegas is the most like open experience you can do, and yet at the same time it is the most on the rails Fallout experience I think I've ever had. You go out of Doc Mitchell's house and it's like here's this new world, let's go, cowboy times, yeehaw, stuff like that.
Right.
And then it's like you got to go to Vegas to find the guy that shot you in the head. You can physically you get to like the top of the you just go up to the graveyard and you can see Vegas in the distance. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to Vegas. Whoops, death clause. Guess I can't go north, can't go west because there's yeah. Well, I mean, yes, that too. Like northwest, that's Cazadors, but then like hard west is like wall. That's the end of the map.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes, literally wall. Yeah.
Yeah. But same thing. Can't go east because there's also a huge mountain range in the way, and same thing. Lots of really strong, really powerful enemies. So your only option is to go south, and then the only direction you can go from south is you can go east after you get to the the area where Nipton is. You go east and then you go up. You basically just do a big U around the map and then up into Las Vegas. It's good. I think, especially as far as the story goes, it kind of had to put you on that track. But I really push back when people say like, oh, it's so open world and like you can do anything. It's like, no, you can't. The game is forcing you in that direction. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it's
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're the people that are saying you can go and do anything. No, you can't. In Fallout 3, you can do that in Fallout 3, more or less.
Yeah.
There is very little getting in your way in Fallout 3. You can go, I mean, I'm pretty much the only space that would be off limits, truly, would be the Deathclaw Cavern or Old Oni or the Yao Guai Cave.
Exactly.
I'm talking like level 2, level 3 type of shit.
Yeah.
So anywhere else, you can do any of the DLCs at any level at any given point. The game levels with you. Mm-hmm. So to say that New Vegas is like the omnipotence of doing anything you want is simply incorrect.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Obsidian built a structured world where, and I suppose that's another reason why New Vegas feels more believable to me and alive in a sense, is that
it's structured because any story needs a strong backbone.
Exactly. And a Death Claws, I was sneezing at Death Claws. I was like, Death Claws in the quarry? I fuck those guys up in Fallout 3 all the time. They should be no problem.
And then the matriarch shows up. Yeah, the matriarch shows up, and you're like, oh no!
Holy shit! Yeah, they meant business. And that hurt me when I first played that, because I'm so used to going anywhere and doing anything in a Bethesda game.
Yeah.
I'm so used to that. But not here.
Yeah.
The game forced me to adapt to different situations and forced me to go and learn about the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
So now, you mentioned that there is no, like, you have to do a U. You don't, actually. You don't. There is a handful of spots. One in particular is called Prim Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I believe it's located around the Hidden Valley bunker where the Brotherhood of Steel are.
Yeah.
It's not the Scorpion Glutch. It's not that path. It's a different one. It's called Prim Pass specifically.
Yeah, it's like hidden in the mountains, like just to the east of Prim. Yeah.
And if you find it, boom, you're golden. You just skipped like half of all that crap. Half that you just cut across.
Right.
And now you're making a rectangle, right?
Yeah.
So So it's interesting that they do offer options to be able to traverse and skip the difficulty per se.
Mhm.
They do give you these options and workarounds, whether or not it be on purpose or through game exploits. You can get through and beeline it to New Vegas.
But then you miss a lot of the story. Like you go through Prim Pass, you miss all the stuff in Nipton, you miss all of the stuff in the Mojave Outpost. You completely miss Cass. You miss the all the stuff happening in Novak. Like for the experienced player, like you sneak that way because maybe you've already gone, done the whole gone through Nipton, all that stuff, and then you find the pass and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go this way. But as far as like the game itself, it points you in this direction and towards
naturally it steers you in that path. Yes, absolutely.
And then as I mentioned, you play through it later and you find new stuff because you've already gone through and you've done the stuff the first time. And so, you find new things about the game, and that's good. But the question that I posed to you earlier, now that we've sort of talked about it a little bit more, like, do you think that sticking, like in a co-op game, again, Fallout New Vegas 2, it's a co-op game. Do you think that if they made the story structure a lot more linear in that manner, more so, or perhaps to the equivalency of Fallout New Vegas, where you are originally anyway, like when you first play the game, you're very, very obviously and very clearly shown that direct path, sort of like a Disneyland experience. You're sent along that main path, and then you get to experience the world for the first time in that sort of tailored, curated way. And then subsequent playthroughs, you go out and you find more stuff and you find new things about the game. But do you think that more structured approach, that more limited approach, is something that Bethesda should do, especially with their whole ethos of giving so much more agency to the player? Do you think that that is something that they would do, they ought to do, or I guess more so ought to do? And would that feel like a Fallout game? Because one of the things that a lot of people mention with Fallout 76 or Fallout 4 is that it feels a lot more structured and enclosed. In general, each one has its own. Everybody has their own gripes about either or in any game in general. But like one of the larger things is that it feels so much more enclosed and like on the rail. Do you think that going in that direction, again with the hypothetical for Fallout New Vegas 2 or any game right. Do you think that's a good thing? And if so, or if not, why would that, I guess if so, why would that feel more like a Fallout game as opposed to, that open world feeling? How much of the open world can you sacrifice for that more authentic Fallout experience?
Right. That's tough. That's really tough.
I didn't say this was going to be an easy podcast.
No, that's all right. I appreciate these questions. These are the important questions that we should be thinking about as a community as a whole. I don't think that they should go with the utmost agency. If we're doing a co-op campaign, I don't think that the plot immediately should be, holy shit, I need to get this done. This is crazy. Hey, I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me on my Pip-Boy phone.
I'm just waiting for that to be the intro to the next Fallout game. Like, top tier, goated. Fallout New Vegas 2 is now my best friend. Friendship with Fallout New Vegas 1 over.
Ended, yeah.
Canceled.
I think that in the beginning it should be more geared towards I think first of all, if it's Fallout New Vegas 2, I think if it's co-op Fallout New Vegas 2, it should be structured in the way that Fallout 3 was structured, where you can go just about anywhere, 95% of the areas, go anywhere and do anything. and still have a good time and not be throttled by the difficulty of the world around you. Because dropping in and playing split screen with your friends, look at what Halo 1 Combat Evolved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Halo 1 had that classic split screen gameplay, and the game treated you as if there was only one Master Chief, but there was two standing right there, like
doing the whole Spider-Man meme thing, pointing at each other.
Right. But the game ignores that. It ignores the co-op aspect of the story. And so in that aspect it works, where you're experiencing something with somebody. You're experiencing something with somebody next to you. And I think if it was geared more towards something like that, it would be more successful. It would be very difficult to have this big open concept and have things make sense. It would be extremely difficult to pull it off and still have that same Fallout appeal if it was an open concept as opposed to on rails. Like if you did A Way Out with an open world, can you imagine? That would be a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, absolute dumpster fire. I mean, it's something that would have to be handled so carefully and properly. So the structure of Fallout 3 and its world would serve better in co-op than New Vegas's world would, in my opinion. But ultimately, I think, honestly, it would be up to someone's personal preference. I don't think it would be. I don't think there's one surefire way to accomplish something, to accomplish a co-op Fallout game. I think it really would depend on a target audience, and because it's just so unique and new. It's so new. It hasn't really been done. I know 76 has the whole multiplayer aspect, but to have a New Vegas 2 be co-op, that would be extremely challenging. I don't think it would work.
Do you think that's what Bethesda is doing or did with Fallout 76? Like that same sort of concept. They're introducing something. They're doing something sort of new, like a different sort of game.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the things that comes to mind is Assassin's Creed, right? Okay. One of the really, for me anyway, one of the really big interesting things that Assassin's Creed is doing is they're making one of the things they're doing is they're doing a mobile game set in China, which I think it's kind of different and interesting. I'd say it's weird because we have seen mobile games from them, and we've seen mobile like games. Like I forget, I think it was Assassin's Creed Chronicles.
Yes,
it was a 2.5D side-scrolling game.
Yeah, it was a side-scroller game.
Yeah. Like that was new. That was interesting. But one of the things that I think they're doing really differently, both narratively and gameplay wise, is they have in the works Assassin's Creed Hex, which is supposed to be set in like not ancient but like old Germany, where like witchcraft and sort of like pseudo magic and like, you know, more darker mysterious elements. And the game is sort of being, you know, there's not a whole lot out about it, but the game is being sort of pitched more as a horror style experience. And especially with the plethora of horror style games, there's a specific kind of game experience you think about when you think about horror games. You think about something like Outlast or Amnesia or I don't know, the Visage. You think about, you know, first person, wandering around in the dark, finding items, experiencing stuff, this, that, and the other thing. Do you think that Fallout 76 is kind of doing that, or did or is doing that same, I guess did, like when they first launched it,
right?
Do you think they're doing that same sort of thing, presenting a different kind of gaming experience as a Fallout thing to sort of draw in new and different people, kind of like how they did with Fallout Shelter, right? That was a mobile game, very different for the Fallout franchise.
Definitely,
wildly popular. As I joked about this before. I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or before we started recording, but one of the party tricks that I like to talk about is ask somebody like, hey, what's the most successful Fallout game? And they'll say, oh, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Fallout New Vegas. I'm like, you're all wrong. It's Fallout Shelter.
Actually, funny you already said that.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, I just couldn't remember if I said it during the interview or beforehand.
You did.
Okay. I couldn't remember. Well, there you go. I said it twice now.
No, that's funny. It's all right.
Yeah. But so it's a different gaming experience, and it's still Fallout. Do you think that that's what 76 did? 76 and Shelter. Do you think that's what they did? And do you think that was regardless of like how 76 started out, obviously it objectively started out awful.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But do you think that is something that is like a good thing? Like, should they be exploring new avenues like that in order to bring other people into the series? Like, I'm not saying they should make Fallout New Vegas Fallout kart racing.
Right, yeah. Fallout kart.
I'm saying they absolutely should, and I should play it because I want to play. Like, let's go. But no, like, do you think that Fallout exploring different kind of game, like genres of games or styles of games, like co-op, online multiplayer, stuff like that, do you think that is something that is going to be a hindrance or a boon to Bethesda and the Fallout community in general?
I think that Fallout 76 by itself is a product of the current times, right? I think that it was trying to capitalize on some kind of online multiplayer experience where the online multiplayer experience was doing so well, such as the Call of Duty scene, the rise of Fortnite coming into the scene, bringing in a younger, new wave and generation of an audience. I think anything new of this caliber, this dramatic change for the company, they will make the most money in this if they stay with the trends, but they will hurt their old player base, most of the old player base. So people like you and me, where 76 and 4 or even future titles might not appeal to us personally, but that can also be said about the original people who played not even Morrowind, but like Daggerfall, those really old games like on the Windows 98 and the Windows Vista 2000. Like, those were some old games that the new ones just, you can't even compare the two. Yeah. It's a completely, the franchise has completely changed its identity.
Like, going back to all those people who played like Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 and Fallout Tactics and stuff. People like TKS Mantis or oh gosh, I'm blanking on who else. But like, I mean, the old guard of the Fallout community. Right. Yeah,
the people who pioneered the series and actually established what it is today, supported the series and made it successful. Mm-hmm. So it's successful in the first place. So the whole idea that this new age and this new vision for the franchise is going to hurt the company, no, it's simply going to bring in newer people. The company will always be just fine unless they make like this absolutely atrocious game that's just, it's really bad. Sometimes that does happen with franchises. That sometimes, like, let's take Fallout Brotherhood of Steel for an example. I mean, I don't think I've ever spoken or heard of anyone saying that this was a good Fallout game, that they enjoyed it personally. I don't think I've ever heard that. So while there is the once in a while you get a black sheep in the game series, most of the time the series will change and bring in new people to replace the old ones that are falling off. You mentioned Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is so wildly different from the rest of the series that it's almost unrecognizable. You might as well just make it a completely different game. At that point. You might as well just call it the God of Rome or the God of Greece, whatever, wherever it takes place. You might as well just call it that, and it would be the same. It would have been even more successful if it was some kind of standalone experience outside of the Assassin's Creed series. So while I think that, something isn't, these newer Fallout titles and where the direction is going with all of this, while I do think that it appeals to a masser audience, the company will be just fine. It does little to appease the old fans and go back to its roots. So it's tough, but at the end of the day, the company can't please everybody. It has to stay afloat, and it wants to keep up with the trends and stay
relevant.
Right, exactly, relevant per se. So hurting the company, no. Replacing the old, yes. Out with the old, in with the new. It's every single modern business practice. I mean, it's almost unavoidable. It's like a lot of mobile games are the same way. A lot of mobile games you play, like Japanese gacha games, they're constantly evolving and pushing more for players to spend and changing their game. And you look at a mobile game when it first releases to the end of its life cycle, through 3 or 4 years, and you see that it almost completely changes. The identity of the game is completely different, almost. So I believe that Fallout is no exception, and the Elder Scrolls is no exception either. And I think to get away from that, they're trying to create Starfield. Try their hand at something new, throw something at the wall, and see if it sticks. So it might not stick for all of us, but there will be a new generation of gamers, of young people, like when I was 13 and 14 playing Oblivion. People will shit on me for liking Oblivion and being like, well, Morrowind's better. That's fine. They're totally entitled to that opinion if they believe Morrowind is better than Oblivion. That's absolutely acceptable.
They're completely 110% legally allowed to be wrong.
Yeah. But right, the principle still holds there. New people will come in and like new things, and you can say that about everything, about music genre, about art, about politics even. And so it's true with everything. Everything will change, everything will move forward, and most of the time it's going to be okay. The company's going to be all right, and as long as they don't make bomb after bomb after bomb and completely neglect any sort of feedback, I think the company will be just fine. And while we might not enjoy the content that we're given when it comes to Fallout, other people will, and other people will hopefully find some magic and something redeemable about these games that make it worthwhile playing for them. So yeah.
What are your thoughts on Starfield? Since you brought it up,
Haven't even watched the trailer.
That's fair.
Haven't even watched the trailer. I'm if it does great, hey, I'll look at it more. If it's middle of the road, I'll still look at it more.
Are you thinking about like going in blind, or are you going to wait till like day one and then start watching all the trailers and all the content and stuff? Not like the gameplay content, but I mean like the stuff that Bethesda puts out.
Right. I'm not sure. It's kind of a toss-up for me. I really don't know.
That's fair.
I'm extremely picky when it comes to games.
Mm-hmm.
However, I acknowledge that other games can be brilliant in their own right. Just because I don't like them or just because they're not my cup of tea doesn't mean that they're bad games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Something like Borderlands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Franchise such as Borderlands. I understand why this game is so successful and why this game has the cult following that it does. And I can see why people enjoy it as much as they do. Borderlands 2 is a great game. I think it's a great game, but it's just not my favorite game. It's not my great game. So when it comes to games and whatnot, I'm very objective and try to leave my personal bias out of it. I know that Bethesda's dropped the ball over the last 5-6 years with a lot of things, and it's not what it used to be. And Todd Howard went from God Howard to extremely memeable and hateable, according to the internet. And but I try to refrain judgment. I try to refrain from all that, and experience it for myself. And then also, if I don't like it, understand why other people do. And if I do like something, I try to understand why other people don't. So, like, Fallout New Vegas is my favorite video game of all time. It's my ultimate safe space. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come without its faults. Right. Absolutely. It's far from a perfect game. And it just happens to be my perfect game.
We've been chatting about a lot of stuff.
Certainly.
here at the beginning, which is good. I think it's important. There's as you said earlier. There's a lot of questions that we as a community need to be asking ourselves, especially when it comes to both the future of what we want out of creative projects like Nuevo Mexico, like the Empire Wastes, Fallout Cascadia, London, Miami, things like that, and how that is going to reflect on what we want out of Bethesda and reflect what Bethesda is in turn going to see us wanting and either pivot or just completely ignore. So in that regard, though, because we've been talking about so much other stuff, let's get into the meat and bones of why people are actually watching this podcast and why they've skipped to this specific point in the video.
Yes.
Why, like, I guess more so, like, make the argument as to why we shouldn't be looking at Fallout Nuevo Mexico as basically the Frontier 2.
Why you shouldn't look at it like that.
Yes, because I think, especially because, like, I mean, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started. We talked about the Frontier a little bit. Everything that's gone down with it, of course, the sort of black spot that is left on the community. A lot of people, both of us, in fact, were super excited for the game before it came out, as
Absolutely.
were many people in the community. Needless to say, things have changed since then. But I think to say that it didn't have an impact on the community is kind of an understatement at least, and at worst just flat out false. So I think especially when it comes to Fallout New Vegas, because this is definitely like a new I mean, obviously it's a New Vegas mod, but it's sort of like Fallout 4 modding and Fallout New Vegas modding are kind of two different things.
Very, very different.
Yeah, Fallout 4 still has like the Sim Settlement series, and it has the oh gosh, what's that other one? I'm forgetting the other one, but it's got a lot of its own stuff. But like what happens in the Fallout New Vegas modding scene doesn't really affect what happens in the Fallout 4 scene, and vice versa.
Thankfully, no. Yeah.
Thankfully. Unfortunately, then the Frontier happened, and that kind of changed everything in general. So again, because this is like the next big thing after Fallout the Frontier, specifically for the New Vegas scene,
Right.
A lot of people might obviously have their reserves. Like I've talked with a couple of different modders, and they say like the first thing that they did after all the stuff with the Frontier happened or came out or started to settle is they had like a big group meeting and like, all right, we need to talk about some stuff and we need to like really like lay down some ground rules here. Because like this has changed a lot of stuff. So
undoubtedly.
Yeah. So what can you say to reassure people that what happened with the Frontier won't be repeated with Nuevo Mexico?
First and foremost, lack of communication within the Frontier devs. Everyone wanted to make their own game. Everyone wanted to leave their own mark. And it was extremely personal to most of them, especially the ones involved with the main big content pieces of said mod. Our Nuevo Mexico team is extremely small. Zap and myself, Bishop, we are constantly talking about what we should do, and the other people that we do talk to, such as the outfit designers and interacting with other people in our Discord server in the community, we give a shit. All right, we care, and we do not want yes men. That is the last thing that we want here. We understand, Zap and I both understand, that not every single line of dialogue and not every single thing that we create in this 3D world space will be absolute gold. All right, we will come up short with a few things. We will have some oversights here and there on release. But our ultimate objective is to create something that if there is a mistake, it can always be changed or improved. So let's take something simple like text bugs. If there's translation issues or misspellings, we can fix that. We can absolutely fix that. And this is why we want to be so transparent with what we're doing, is because with the trailers are to show you exactly what you're going to get, show you exactly what we're going for. So there is no, oh, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain type of deal. There's nothing that's going to just come out of left field and slap you across the face and say, fuck you. Such as the Enclave space station was such a bizarro, crazy idea that happened in the Frontier. We have nothing like that. And so nothing in this game is going to just all of a sudden come out of nowhere where it's this big important thing and you had no idea it was coming. So while there will be some stuff that you won't see, and there will be some stuff that will be a surprise. We're not going to show every little detail about everything.
Obviously, there has to be some surprises to the story.
Right, of course. Otherwise, you just kill all hype of the mod, and it's like, why play it? You can just watch all the trailers and see for yourself, and you've already got the experience. But the whole idea of communicating and answering questions and being transparent about changes is to create a sense of trust. We want the people in the community to have some faith and understand that if something is not received well, if something really is going south, like I'm talking like over 50% of the people who are backing us all of a sudden scratch their heads and go, I don't know about that. Like, that seems a little, like, I'm talking like the level-headed people who actually have constructive things to say. If something's not well received, we'll change it. We will change that. We'll think about it. We'll change it. We'll work it with, sometimes less is more. And I think that's really important, especially with storytelling and games such as New Vegas. Sometimes less is more. We don't have to have all this crazy new stuff like cars and tanks. We don't need that. It's not necessary. While impressive in the engine itself, it's not something that's going to make or break whether or not you want to play it or not. So I saw some concerns about, the dual wielding pistols in the trailer. That's entirely optional. That is not like a new feature exclusive to us. That's a mod resource that we were given permission to have to make the trailer a little bit more flashy and a little more interesting than just a vanilla pistol going off.
It's kind of like how in oh wait, hold on. Could you dual wield in Skyrim? I completely forgot.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Can.
Yeah. I knew you could do it with spells. I just couldn't remember if you could do it with like one-handed weapons.
Yep. One-handed weapons. You can dual wield. Yep.
But yeah, just like with Skyrim, where you have the option of dual wielding pistols. You have the option of dual wielding swords in Skyrim,
Right.
obviously. But in
Yes.
Fallout Nuevo Mexico, you're saying you have the option of dual wielding pistols. You don't have to, but the option is there should you wish to, go full Metal Gear Solid with it.
Right. If you enjoy that kind of combat, if you enjoy that, by all means, please use it. And if you don't enjoy that, please, by all means, use a single hand, use the vanilla system. That is perfectly fine. I myself don't use dual wielding mods. My game is mostly vanilla, except for modded in content such as DLC related things and quest lines.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I choose to play my New Vegas. I keep it vanilla. I don't have any sort of custom or upgraded textures. So if you want to play this game as vanilla as possible, or if you want to mod the shit out of it and change the way the gameplay plays, or change your EMB, etc., you have full freedom to do that. We are not going to tell you how to play your New Vegas mod, or Nuevo Mexico, I should say. We're not going to tell you how to play it. So trying to implement choice and trying to be transparent and listen to the community and interact with them more, that was our first and foremost thing that we wanted to do, is get some trust. So we knew we couldn't ask for blind faith, because look what happened. I mean, it was such a shame. So the Frontier was not very well received, and that really sucks. It tarnished a little bit of New Vegas and its community, and it's a shame that had to happen. So instead of asking for blind faith, we instead just put something out and say, see for yourself and make your own opinions and judgments about it. Because we're not pulling any punches or hiding anything. We're not going to hide anything or be manipulative about it or lead you astray. What you see is what you're going to get, ultimately.
But there are going to be sex lizards in the game, right?
Oh, absolutely!
Oh, thank God! That's all I wanted.
That is. Oh, why didn't you say so, man?
I don't know. I was embarrassed to bring it up, but like I really wanted to ask, man.
See, those kinds of questions when they pop up, they do get annoying sometimes, because it's like, all right, come on. Mm-hmm. If I was trying to get canceled and I wanted people to hate me, I would have written in sex lizards, or sex pigs, or donkeys, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
it's like I would have done some stupid memey bullshit like that. But
because like in the last trailer, you kind of really hinted that there was going to be aliens in the game. Whether there actually is or not, I don't know. I don't know anything about like what Nuevo Mexico has going on in the background or anything. I haven't gotten a glimpse at their story or anything, but it felt to me like it was kind of hinting at that. Like I'm sorry, man, but like if I can't have sex with the aliens, like I don't know if I want to play this game.
You can't fuck the aliens, Toshi.
Damn it!
Sorry. 0 out of 10.
Shit. Worst game ever.
The worst mod ever. Ew, disgusting.
Yeah. But like that is another thing that I wanted to ask. Maybe because like indirectly or not, because again we did talk about the Frontier before starting the interview a little bit. How much? Because one of the things that I noticed, especially with your last trailer, the like real big one, where you talked about the two different ways you can experience the story. Yeah. The first thing that came to mind was the last big mod that preceded the Frontier, and that was Fallout New California, which I did a review on a couple years ago. And was and still is kind of a big thing for my channel. I've actually been thinking about revisiting that a little bit, seeing if I still hold a lot of the same thoughts and opinions that I do about the mod then that I do now.
Right.
Which would have been the third time I played through that mod. But I think it's a very good mod. I think it's well written. I think it's well paced. I think the options that you have in that game are very well presented. Obviously, it's not perfect. There are some writing choices that maybe aren't the most creative or lore friendly. I think specific interpersonal character situations aren't as good as they probably could have been. But hindsight's 2020. What can you say?
Of course. Yeah.
But as it relates to Nuevo Mexico, how much, if any, inspiration have you taken from the Frontier, from New California, or from any other past mod Fallout New Vegas mod projects?
All right. I like this question. So, with New California, we learned that probably the biggest criticism is that there's not enough. There's not enough of it. There's not enough side content. There's not enough places to explore. The main story was mostly well received from what I saw. I personally have never played New California, but I have watched gameplay of it. I've watched gameplay of it on YouTube, and I have nothing bad to say about it. I have nothing. I have no criticisms because I have not played it, so I can't actually. I've watched it and I received it well. It looked very interesting. Zap himself has played New California, and he says it's really fantastic. He holds the same sentiment as you. Actually, he believes that it was very well done. So, if anything that we learned, if there's anything we learned from all of this, it's mostly just fill it up. Have more. Side content is a must. And side content will be probably the crowning jewel of Nuevo Mexico. I don't think our main attraction will, in fact, be the main storyline. I think our biggest achievement will be engaging in creative side content and add a plethora of it for you, the player, to experience. Because a lot of the side quests in New Vegas and in Fallout 3, in my opinion, are fantastic and some of the biggest highlights of both of the games. So if you even strip the entire main story out of both of the games, they still have a plethora of side content to explore and be interested in. So that is something that we want. So I suppose if we learned anything from New California, again, I'm repeating myself, but just put more stuff, put more side content, put more engaging places to explore. And honestly, I think if the only criticism of this mod is I want more, I think these guys did something right. And for New California, I think they really did something spectacular. Honestly, if that's the general criticism, is that I just want more of New California, then something was done right, in my opinion. Continuing off of what we learned for Fallout: The Frontier, their atmosphere and soundtrack and set pieces in the world space of Portland is spectacular. I believe that it is the most immersive world space across any sort of vanilla game or mod ever in any sort of Fallout experience. Walking through the streets of ruined Portland skyscrapers and buildings in the snow was incredible. I loved every fucking second, and I will die on that hill, all right? Fallout: The Frontier had some of the most immersive atmospheric areas and soundtracks that Fallout has ever seen, and that is absolutely something that I want to have in Nuevo Mexico. We have to have that same level of immersion and intrigue in our set pieces. Now, we unfortunately can't do a big city like that. That's just not going to make sense here. And so we won't have anything like the size of Portland. We won't have anything like that. However, it's still applied to small spaces, right? It's still applied to in smaller areas, which leads to my next mod, which is Havasu Blues. I voiced 2 ghouls in this mod, and I had no idea what I was getting into when I first started playing. Now, this is a fairly small mod. I'd say it's half the size of Old World Blues in terms of content and size and places you can go. I'd say it's about half or 2/3 the size of Old World Blues World Space. And Havasu Blues had this brilliant charm to it where it wasn't combat oriented, right? It was more, it didn't hold your hand. It forced you to go out, use your head, and explore. When you first enter this mod, you don't have any of your stuff, right? It starts off a lot like Dead Money, but a lot less punishing, I should reiterate. It's not a gameplay challenging a mod, so to speak. It's more of a brain teaser. It forces you to think and look at your surroundings, really comb the area that you're in. Now, it's nothing impossible, right? There's nothing impossible. Anyone with a halfway decent halfway decent head on their shoulders could easily get through this and have an amazingly rewarding experience. When you complete these quests for this little ghoul town on the side of a mountain, which is really creative, by the way. I love the way they set it up. After you complete their side quests and get all your gear back, which actually, if you have 100 lockpicking, you can just take all your stuff out of the crate and then leave. You don't actually have to do shit, which is awesome. That there's a workaround and it's just fun. It's cool that they added some stuff in there. So after that, you get to Havasu, Lake Havasu City, and there's no quest marker. There's no one telling you where to go, what to do, or who to talk to. All you know is that there's a survivor from the plane crash that you were in, and they are in Lake Havasu City. Now, Lake Havasu City, it's very small. it's very, very small. It's very contained. It might be half the size of Freeside, if that. But god damn it, is it immersive and interesting, and it lets you experience and find your own way. Nothing is telling you what to do or where to go. And while that won't be like the main focus of everything that we have in Nuevo Mexico, I think it would be impossible to juggle everything at that point. But take some notes off of that mod in particular and not throw everything rewarding and interesting in front of your face and just let you discover it. I remember staying up while playing this mod last year. I was exploring it, and I really wanted to see the vault. One of the developers, we were on Discord, just typing out to each other. I was telling him how much I was enjoying the mod, and I really wanted to. I couldn't find the vault. There was no map marker, so I couldn't find it. I wanted to find it so bad, and he gave me a hint. It's like, I'm not going to tell you where it is. I want you to find it yourself. I'll give you a hint. It's in and around this area right here. And so I'm like, what the fuck? Where the fuck is it? Like, for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. I felt so stupid. I was constantly checking my Pip-Boy to look at any sort of, like, door spaces. You know, they have on the local map, they have certain spaces where you can see the entrance or exits to some places.
Right.
I was looking for that. They didn't have it. They didn't have that on the local map. You have to look for this entrance yourself with your own eyes.
Okay.
Instead of relying on the Pip-Boy telling you where everything is. And when I finally found it, it was like comical how long it took me. Almost 20 minutes to find this entrance. I'm dancing around the area, just looking. And I finally found it, and it was such a rewarding experience. And I had a laugh about it as well. It really, threw it in my face. I was like, wow, I really wasn't trying my best. I was trying to rely on the Pip-Boy to just tell me exactly where it was. So if I can implement some of that satisfying magic that Havasu Blues offered, then I would love to include some form of something like that, where if you find it, you are special, good for you, and you're rewarded. You are absolutely rewarded for that experience in Havasu Blues, and I want our players and myself, even though I'm creating a lot of this, to feel rewarded when they're playing, instead of just another side quest. And why not just have something exist right here? No one tells you where it is. No one tells you that it even exists, and you just find it and you explore it and you get your reward, and it's rewarding. Like, there's really something to be said about less is more sometimes. So those are some things that I've taken into account from those three mods in particular. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's how that's how I feel about that.
I remember seeing an article. I can't remember who exactly it was from, but it was one of like the gaming journalists, but it wasn't like IGN or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say maybe it was PC Gamer. But regardless, there was an article about Fallout Nuevo Mexico, and I think if I remember correctly, in the article, at some point they referenced that it shared. They either said outright or they alluded to that the mod shares a lot of similarities or seems to be taking a lot of inspiration from the Van Buren. From Van Buren.
Yes.
It's always I can't imagine that it's not something that they didn't talk with you guys or interview you guys, ask questions from you guys beforehand. But
yes, I was at the forefront of that interview as well.
Okay.
Yes, a woman named Allie actually interviewed me, and she was wonderful. She was very, very professional. She listened, and it was a pleasant experience. So yeah,
very good, very good. My question is though, obviously, I think anybody who's seen the last big trailer can kind of tell, like, oh, they're taking a lot of inspiration from Van Buren with being a prisoner and the vault escape and stuff like that. But my question is, what is sort of like the larger story of Nuevo Mexico? Because So I guess with the last big one, because that's kind of like the one that has the most information and stuff, kind of like laid out there. You explain sort of the different beginnings that you can go into the mod with, which I think is just great. Like I really like the way, or the choice that New California gave you, and how you actually experience the game. At least from the starting point, with the kind of sort of class difference. It kind of felt a little bit old school RPG sort of way. Like, do you play as the tank? Do you play as the mage? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. But with Nuevo Mexico, I don't really get that same feeling. Like, you're not playing as like, oh, you're playing as this character that's geared this way, or playing as this character that's geared that way. No, you're just playing as two different characters with two different starting points and two different stories.
Right.
Which is
Exactly.
awesome. I can't wait, especially since one of those stories is you're playing as a ghoul, which is another thing entirely. Like, that's a big thing. But as far as like the larger story of Nuevo Mexico, besides the start of the game, can you talk about that? Do you have like a slated thing that's coming out that explains sort of the bigger story? Because
that's actually in the next trailer.
Okay, can you talk anything about that? Because I don't think I've seen like all of the Nuevo Mexico stuff, and I think it looks awesome, and I'm super excited for it. But I can't really figure out like what the big story is. Like, what's the story of Nuevo Mexico?
All right. Well, the only thing I can really say or hint at that won't be showcased in the second trailer, is instead of trying to deliver something or look for a person, you're trying to find a place, but you just don't know it yet right off the bat. So that's all I can really say. I can't really elaborate any more on that without giving it away, or having other people piece it together and be like, "Oh shit, that's what it is." Oh, that's gonna be crazy. So I can't reveal that mystery yet. I can't reveal that place just yet. But it's really fucking cool. It's really fucking cool. It wasn't my idea, so that's why I think it's really cool. You know, I don't have any personal bias towards that. I think that that this place that you're looking for is really, really cool, and it's going to be pretty different. It's going to be pretty different. We might push the envelope a little bit, and don't worry, it's not a fucking space station. It's not aliens. Like, I promise. That's I can confirm that it's not that. It's not that. All right. It has nothing to do with any of those things. Yeah. That's about all I can say about that.
Okay. I it's always kind of interesting asking, or rather interviewing developers, even though at this point, I think the majority of the people I've interviewed have been developers, because separate from like other content creators like myself, or, you know, not even just like YouTubers or streamers, but like podcasters, for example. My last interview was with the main writer of Once Upon a Wasteland.
Oh yeah,
nice. Reticent Duet. I'm hoping to eventually be able to talk to Chad, Ken. Hoping to be able to talk to him at some point. Hoping to be able to talk to Lawrence from the Modus Files. Oh gosh, I can't remember. I think Rob, the guy who runs the Fallout Lorecast podcast. There's a lot of people I want to chat with. But,
that's great. That's a good list.
But one of the things that's always kind of interesting, or maybe just like alien for me personally when talking to mods, is one of the questions I like to ask is like, what sort of advice do you have for like creative types, right? Like creative types in your sphere of influence, or maybe not in your sphere of influence, but like in your sort of like area of expertise, like other modders, for example. Because we've talked a lot about what makes, like, we've been talking about a lot of big things as it relates to like the Fallout franchise and stuff. So like, if you were approached by somebody who was like, "Hey, I have an idea for a mod, and you know, like, this is my idea. Like, what do you think? Like, what sort of advice would you give to them that would allow them to, or at least give them the opportunity to ruminate on it, to digest it, to take the information in, and then put out a better project?" In other words, I'm not asking what would you tell them to do in order to put out a better project, but what would you advise? Like, what would you advise they think about? How, as you said, how would they approach it? Like, what sort of mind space or head space do you think that somebody should be in to be able to put out the best mod, or the best YouTube video, or the best product, best picture, anything like that?
Right. Okay. Well, first and foremost, if you want to be taken seriously, right? If you want to be taken seriously, don't meme it the fuck out. Okay? Don't throw in all these memes, all right? If you're making something like exclusively Wild Wasteland, again, completely different. And it's not to be taken seriously. Most of us understand that. But if you're trying to be taken seriously, don't meme it the fuck out and take from other established things already. Don't put Wolfenstein copy paste garbage into your fucking mod. It's not gonna bode well, okay? People are gonna hate it. So have that little dig at the frontier there with the NCR campaign. That is a perfect example of what not to do. Another way to look at this stuff is play mods. Okay, go through different mods, big and small. Play the frontier. Play all of the main quest lines. Right? Play all of them. It is just as important to absorb bad as it is to absorb good. If you absorb too much good, you will lack originality and you will lack something unique. If you absorb too much bad, we know what happens. We know what happens if you absorb too much bad. It's going to be bad. The important things to take out of those bad things, right, is to understand why it failed. Understand why it fell short. Understand why it fell flat. Understand that, okay, how could this have been improved? Listen to some of the level-headed criticism on these mods. Talk to other people in the community. Get their opinions. Now, some opinions will be really constructive and great, and other opinions will be, hey, make this entire Nuevo Mexico mod about Walter White and Jesse. No, lick my ass. We're not making the entire mod based off of cocaine cooking.
But it's gonna be a reference. Like, we can find the RV out in the desert, right?
Of course, you'll find a reference or two. But
you gotta have Wild Wasteland, though.
Right. You'd be baffled the amount of requests we have. Like, well, there better be some kind of Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul reference in there. Oh, my God. We heard you the first fucking time.
Yeah.
God damn it, Stella. I heard you the first time. And the 15th, too. It's one of those moments.
Yeah.
So, again, absorb. Be a sponge. Play different mods. I would actually recommend that you stay, if you're trying to create a mod, don't immediately default to the Some Guy series as a template. I wouldn't recommend that. And that's not a jab towards the Some Guy series at all. Don't mistake my words here. That is a fantastic. It's the most popular quest mod series for a fucking reason. All right, It's brilliant. It's a great experience. However, something a little more less known is the Overseers mods. Now, I'm sure you've at least heard of the Overseer.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I think I think his mods in general are a brilliant example of what you should try and do.
Give us a brief overview of his content or of their content, just for prosperity's sake.
Absolutely. So the Overseer, he has many quest mods, and they all have their own self-contained story, right? Much like Some Guy series also has its self-contained story, but it's handled a little differently. Some Guys is handled off of the premise of bounties and then expands from there. The Overseer has an already established, laid out story with bounties on the side, and they all tie in with one another. So my first introduction to his mods would be The Road North. This offers a unique world space. It's a linear world space where it's just a canyon that you travel through, and it expands in different areas. But it's unique. It's different. We don't have anything like that. I know there's the Grand Canyon in Honest Hearts, but that's way different. It's nothing like that.
It's a Zion Canyon, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Zion Canyon. Excuse me.
Yeah. That would have been odd. I'd play a Fallout game set in the Grand Canyon. Like, that'd be wild.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I slipped up. Sorry.
Yeah. Either way, yes.
Right.
It is based off Zion Canyon, but both concepts conceptually are unique and interesting. And it sounds like that's what one of the Overseer's mods was looking to explore. That sort of scenery and atmosphere that we haven't really seen a whole lot of outside of Zion Canyon in Honest Hearts.
Instead of going out in multiple directions, it's one solid snaking path.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout this path there's established societies and mercenary groups just holding on to land, and they each have their own self-contained story. This has nothing to do with the overarching theme of New Vegas and the Platinum Ship and Hoover Dam. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever, and that's why it's so refreshing. It's handled in a way that's so intriguing and cozy. It's cozy and nice, and you feel like you're doing something important still. You go there off of a premise of hunting down somebody, but on your way you're met with all this different shit that's awesome. Everything is so distracting and intriguing, and the voice acting is brilliant, and it's very well written, and there are these extremely developed characters that get callbacks and that sometimes we see in other further entries of his other mods, such as, I believe the next one taking place would be his mod called Eliza. Now, Eliza is a follower in this mod, and what's great about this mod is that you don't actually have to have Eliza with you while you do these quests. You'll see Eliza and you'll interact with her. At least, you have to interact with her at least once or twice, but she's not, it's called Eliza, but she's not the whole centerpiece of this entire mod. There's something bigger than her out there. And it takes place in the vanilla New Vegas world space, and it's seamlessly integrated. It feels so vanilla and so like it needs to be there, right? It needs to be there. Now, there's another bounty hunting mod that the Overseer does called Headhunting, and I believe it's 30 different bounty missions with all unique characters, all unique scenarios with different background information about each hit, and every single one is unique and interesting, and you get a unique entry about said bounty. It's brilliant. It's such a great and different way of handling bounty hunting. It's not washed out, recycled, and dry. It's a really great experience. Especially, it's so much fun to just sit and do the bounty 1 to bounty 30, like just in a row. It's just so immersive and great, and you actually feel like a bounty hunter who's doing this for money. Like, it really feels authentic like that. The next one after that would be, my personal favorite, I suppose. I might have missed one, but The Depths of Depravity. This is my favorite quest mod of all time, and I think it is a must download. Well, I think all of his are a must download. They fit so seamlessly into the world of New Vegas that, like I said, it feels vanilla. So the Depths of Depravity really tackle more heavy, more emotional, gritty, violent stories in New Vegas, and it portrays the wasteland as just that, the wasteland. People don't give a fuck. It's lawless, if you really think about it. There's no policing system out here. There's no court system. There's no jail. The jail is a bullet in the head. The courier escaped jail, though. So
Twice.
Twice.
You got shot in the head twice.
Times.
He got shot in the head twice, then had his brain removed.
Right. Imagine being that good.
Right.
Imagine being that good, man.
3 times. Twice again had his brain removed. If you tie in the Tale of Two Wastelands story, it's Fallout 3
That's
and
true.
then Fallout. Like, damn.
Yeah. Like that's kind of crazy.
Right.
But anyway, that mod explores a lot of darker themes, and it doesn't shy away from them. It doesn't pull punches. It punches you in the gut hard instead. And you try to do and pick the good option, and you want to do good. It motivates you to be a good person. It's really motivating you and appeals to our better nature as human beings. At least that's what my experience was. It affected me. And when I was done, when I finished and completed the quest of the Depths of Depravity, when that mod was finished and concluded, I had to sit back. and say, holy shit. Like, that was an experience right there. That was an experience. And so if you're going to take any sort of notes on any mod in general, if you're going to draw from anything, take inspiration from the Overseer stuff. It's really, really brilliant. I can't express that enough. I think it would be criminal to not have his mods installed into every single playthrough that you do of New Vegas. It offers something unique every time you do it. You have different dialogue options to choose. While the outcome is mostly the same, the end outcome, how you get there can also be wildly different. And the narrative changes as you make different decisions, or spare certain people or kill certain people, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not like Shakespeare or anything, by all means, but what Fallout game is Shakespeare? I mean,
Fallout 4.
Honest. Oh, right. I forgot.
I
forgot. I'm sorry.
That was actually it's funny because that was actually something that during my interview with the lead writer of Once Upon a Wasteland, Reticent Duet, that was something that he mentioned he said that the mission where you go and save Strong and everything, and you gotta help Rex Goodman, and he's there to teach civility to the super mutants and stuff, and teach them about Shakespeare and stuff. Like, he said that was a real interesting storyline, because, well, at the moment, one of the things that we were talking about was like how people would actually react to the Wasteland when it comes to like art and culture and stuff. And it's like, yeah, obviously people would try to, build that back up. It's like, once the world ends, like, art and culture doesn't just stop being something that humans innately, almost instinctually try to create and be involved with, especially at this point in time. Like, it if anything becomes even more important. And to that point, as far as it relates to mods, if I can give my opinion here as somebody who does not even a little bit know how to make mods and can barely function in the games themselves, I would but who is somebody who has a wealth of experience in both creative writing as well as storytelling. It was mostly
which
for like
is very important.
Yes.
Very.
I always recommend people to go outside of the genre or the zone or the sphere that they're creating for. So, like, if you're making a Fallout mod, obviously, as you said, you should take inspiration from the masters in your field. You would be doing yourself a disservice to not check out the Overseer, or you talked a lot about what was it, Wavis, the blues one,
Havasu Blues.
Havasu Blues. Yeah, that sounded interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. You would be doing yourself a disservice not to look at your peers, but not just in the New Vegas sphere. You should also be looking at other stories told in the community. You should be looking at the Sim Settlements 2 mods in Fallout 4. You should be looking at what is it? The Forgotten City in Fallout, or in Skyrim, which is now a standalone game. A very good standalone game. It is. Yeah. But not just that, you should be looking outside of Bethesda's wheelhouse. You should be looking at stories from we talked about A Way Out, which has very good storytelling. You should be looking at
Dragon Age is another great example, I believe.
Exactly, Dragon Age is a fantastic example. And not just writing. You should be looking at world design, gameplay design, pacing. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot that goes into creating a story, but there's so much more that goes into creating a good mod. And it's just like, go outside of your comfort zone. If you're making a story that's about, like, you're heavily inspired by Call of Duty, right? Right. I can't speak to the quality of Call of Duty stories because I haven't played any of the Call of Duty games, but
there are some pretty solid ones. Yeah. There are some good ones out there, absolutely.
Yeah, but like, if that's your wheelhouse and that's the kind of story you want to make with your Fallout mod, look at other mediums, because you can still make that story, but you can still draw inspiration from other stories, from like we said, Dragon Age. You could draw inspiration from Metal Gear, Grand Theft Auto, this, that, and the other thing. Just because you're making a game set in a very specific location doesn't mean that you can only take inspiration from games set in that universe. You can make
absolutely.
You could make the story of Grand Theft Auto 5 in Fallout New Vegas, or in the world of Fallout, and you could do it in such a way where it feels natural, but you have to be able to understand how you translate stories. Like, right. One of the things that I was told is, when it comes to storytelling, there's only really two stories. A man returns home after many years away, and a stranger comes to town. There's no other stories besides those two. And the reason for that is because those are the core backbones to almost every single story. They might not they might not touch on those,
Right.
But like, when you really sit back and think of different stories, they all sort of have that as like, one of those two things is a core element.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like, oh shit, where do I go from there? That was such a definitive conclusion there.
One thing I want to add to that is, don't feel stranglehold. Don't let the lore stranglehold you.
Oh no, right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
There is a lot of open-ended concepts in the world of Fallout and in any established universe.
Mm-hmm.
Take Star Wars, for example. There's so many open-ended concepts in Star Wars. They have canon lore, but there is so much that you can do with that story, with that universe per se. And Fallout is no exception. Being restricted to the lore can be extremely it can be a detriment, honestly. It can hurt your mod more than help it out. If you're doing everything by the books about the established lore, there can be good things and there can be some really bad things that fall flat on its face. For example, the prison guards at Tibbetts in our trailer, they're not Protectrons. Would they canonically be Protectrons? Probably. Or Securitrons, either of the two. Or Mr. Gutsy's. But those are like the three robots of that. And we wanted to do something different. We wanted to push the boundary just a little bit. And so having a humanoid robot immediately switches it up just like that. It immediately pops out at you as, wow, okay, that's different. I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
So the same thing goes with creating a follower, all right? Have your follower give a shit about the world around them. Have your follower comment on certain things. Create someone 3D so that you, as the player, can reflect off of them and hopefully have your player character either synergize or disagree and fight to the death with this person. But regardless of whichever path you go down, that path will be justified. That path will be justified and satisfying and purposefully taken. So I guess what I'm really trying to say about that is just don't do everything that's comfortable and readily available to you. Push the boundary just a little bit to set yourself apart from the vanilla game and other mods that exist in this community as well. And that doesn't go for just New Vegas. That goes for anything. Like Fallout London, for example. I'm excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. We haven't had a Fallout in Europe before. Like, that's actually going to be really unique and different. And it's not going to be America. Like, that's already a crazy difference right there. That's already something so different. I mean, you don't even have to try with that one. That one's just way out of the realm.
Yeah.
England and America are two very different places, societally and structurally as well, just the scenery. So, dare to suck a little bit. You know what I mean? Dare to suck, because you never know when you might strike gold.
Exactly.
So that would be my advice. That would be my advice to someone who's trying to be a sponge, push yourself a little bit, and do it because you want to. Do it because you want to. Don't try to do it expecting to get anything out of it. You're doing this for free, and do it because you want to and you're passionate about it. I'm not expecting to get any sort of like writing deal or be signed on to a game company through doing Nuevo Mexico. I'm doing this because this is my favorite video game of all time, and that's probably not going to change in the foreseeable future. This game is my safe place, and I want to give back what it's given to me. So make sure you sit down, you think about why you're doing something before you actually do it.
One of the big things that we talked about both during the interview and before the interview is how Fallout is changing. Fallout is always going to be changing. It's always going to be introducing new things. It's always going to be referencing old things. Old things are always going to exist. There's always going to be people that will exist that prefer the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. This isn't something that's unique to Fallout or unique to Bethesda or unique to gaming or unique to anything. This is just kind of how humans are hardwired. As somebody who's been a part of the community for a very long time, and somebody who has been through a lot of changes in the community, new games, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, this, that, and the other thing, and still is consistently coming back to Fallout New Vegas, one of the older games. What would you like to, maybe not what would you like to, what would you implore specifically the fan base, because there's not little that we can do to sway Bethesda's opinion, but at the end of the day, Bethesda is more so primarily beholden to their own interests as a company, as well as shareholders, the direction of the market, all that fucking capitalism shit.
Right. Nonsense that we have no business being a part of.
Exactly. But which they obviously very strongly gripe about via Fallout. But more so specifically for the communities, like what is the one thing that you would implore, recommend, or just ask people to keep as like in the forefront of their minds when it comes to new games or new experiences as it relates to, again, Fallout, Bethesda, video games, or just life in general? Like, what would you implore people to keep in the front of their minds?
Understand that not everything is tailor-made for you. Understand that things will take its course and you will have complaints about them. But don't let that be your expectation nor your full criticism. Instead of looking at only the bad, instead of only looking at things that people are memeing about, try to find something redeemable and try to find the silver lining. Because at the end of the day, a human being with a skeleton underneath all this skin, just like you, made this video game. And even if you're making something and creating something like a mod, like such as me, for an example, this mod is not going to be tailor-made for me specifically. It won't have everything that I want. It won't have everything that I find redeemable in a video game. It won't be the perfect story that I can conjure up in my mind. It's not going to be a fan fiction. This is going to be something for hopefully everyone to find something that they enjoy and hold on to that part. I encourage people to be more optimistic instead of harboring dreadful feelings. Instead of hoping and praying that any future mod project doesn't end up like the Frontier, instead be intrigued and look for reasons as to why it's not why it's not the Frontier, why it's not a failed project. Look at reasons and evidence pointing to why this will be hopefully successful. And that is, again, not just Nuevo Mexico, but all of the future projects of Fallout, Miami, London, so many others. I'm sure that will be conjured up. I mean, if the lead developer of Havasu Blues was so worried about what everyone was going to think, and if he strayed away from his foundation and made something that had no place in Fallout, first of all, it probably would never have been released. It would have been too ambitious. And second of all, it wouldn't have been so successful and well received on the Nexus. So when you're consuming something, when you're consuming content, try to understand that the person who made it also likes to sit in front of a computer and consume as well. Someone is very similar to you as a human being. I'm just a regular dude at his house making something that I love because I want to give back. I think I have a pretty good idea and I want to capitalize on it and share it. And as the consumer, looking at other content that's coming out, as a consumer, from my standpoint, I will go into that same mentality. I will go into other projects, other mods, looking and being optimistic, being not overly excited, but optimistic, open, being a sponge, trying to absorb. Because if you spend too much time trying to, hoping and praying that it doesn't turn out a certain way, you're going to manifest a bad time for yourself. Instead, you'll go into this world or experience trying to look for something that you hate, trying to look for something that's going to displease you. You shouldn't have that approach with anything, all right? Even something so simple as trying food, right? So simple as trying a new food or going ziplining, etc. You can't go into new experiences expecting things to be horrible. And if you do, you're hurting yourself as a person. You're hurting yourself from experiencing something that can have such a dramatic effect on you in a positive way. Fallout New Vegas was that game for me. I didn't like it at first. I didn't like that I couldn't go anywhere. I was upset and frustrated that the game was harder than Fallout 3. It's like in Fallout 3, I could go wherever I wanted. In New Vegas, I had to learn. I had to stop and learn, and I didn't like it at first. When I first booted it up and I was playing, I did not like it. But instead, I gave it another chance. I gave it a second try, and I decided, all right, I'm going to try and learn something. I'm going to try and approach this game differently. And it ended up being my favorite video game of all time. And here I am, making something. I've been inspired by this game so much. It has got me through many nights and many mornings and many hours, over 2,000 hours of just pure fun. When I'm bored, I can play this game and be all right. And that's how you should look at things, because you never know when something's going to change you or affect you positively. I guess that's the advice that I should give when you're trying to consume something different.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Bishop, assistant lead writer for Nuevo Mexico, an upcoming mod for Fallout New Vegas. As always, if you enjoyed this episode of the Atomcast, the best way you can show your support is by subscribing to our Patreon, as your monthly contribution will go towards improving the quality of transmission, as well as helping to decrease the time between uploads. Until next time, however, I thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.